What up, YouTube? We are here at Dava Studio. I'm here with Esteban, the senior thumbnail strategist. He's been at Dava for 4 years. He's an excellent thumbnail designer. And today we're going to be breaking down YMH Rebrand and a couple of their thumbnails.
Okay, so when they first approached us looking to redo the branding for their show, this is what they had at the beginning. It was kind of simplistic. We had 3 really big headshots, 2 of the hosts and 1 of their guests. Because it's a podcast style thumbnail, you usually want to go a little bit more simplistic. But I think the thing with these thumbnails is that they're a little too crowded, and I think there is a lack of branding. So one thing that we really wanted to focus on was actually giving these thumbnails more of an identity. And they showed us some of this art that they had to represent the 2 hosts that we referenced to give the thumbnails more of an identity. So one of the first few concepts that we came up for them was this, something that highlighted more of that yellow color that we saw in those concept arts, and giving each of the hosts and the guests a little bit more breathing room between each of their headshots, just so it's a little bit more identifiable. Obviously having the logo here, and another thing that they asked specifically for was to remove any sort of number related to the episode. They didn't really like this one, just due to a whole bunch of different reasons. I don't think they feel like it resonated enough with the brand, which is totally okay. But after a few changes and a little bit of feedback, we got to something a little bit more on brand for them. So they sent us over an image of their studio background that we were able to use for the background of their thumbnails, and we were able to zone in on a yellow color that would actually match more of what they were going for. One thing that's really important with these thumbnails is making sure that each of the hosts and the guests are as identifiable as possible. So we always make sure that we color grade them and enhance their images as much as possible while still keeping them natural. So one thing that we really like to do is making sure we whiten the teeth, whiten the eyes, and again, giving them a really good color grade. One thing that we did feel that would have helped these thumbnails when first working on them was something to give it a little bit more of a comedic factor, or something that would attract a little bit more attention. As well as celebrity headshots do in attracting a specific audience, if you can do anything to enhance that, you should. So what we like to do here is just kind of edit things around the topic of the video. So these 2 very popular podcast hosts were talking about, what are your charges, something related to cops, something like that. So we decided to add some police lights in the background, add the glow like pouring off on the edges of them. I believe some other topics were talking about Tinder app or dating apps, and some handcuffs over here. We feel that high intensity colors along with their faces, good attention grabber. And then obviously their branding here with their logo and a yellow bar just for a little bit more focus in on the center subjects. Going back and looking at their previous thumbnail style, it did perform very well. You can see it does have a lot of views. However, we still go back and encounter the same issues of inconsistent color grading, very crowded with how big their headshots are, and a lack of recognizability or branding. So I think one of the main reasons this could have performed very well was because Steve-O is recognizable in the thumbnail, and his audience was able to identify him very quickly, but a better brand sense. So using a more standout color like their brand yellow, removing the episode number just so we'd had more space on the thumbnail, and then spacing out their headshots and adding different elements pertaining to whatever they were talking about in the. So here we have a solo episode of both of them. We do have slightly bigger headshots, but now that we have pushed them over to the side a little bit more, we leave space for a little bit more of the design. We were able to replicate the same amount of views with no guest and a few more design elements that could have captured a lot of attention.
So as part of the first initial rebrand, how were those conversations like? Like, did you bring up the idea? Did they have something in mind already that they wanted to implement? How was that conversation at the beginning?
Luckily enough, they were open to a lot of our creative ideas. So we had a lot of freedom as to how we wanted to make the brand look a little bit better, cleaner. But they were really nice about it. They had a lot of very minor feedback, including, just removing the episode number, making sure their branding was on there. And then aside from using the colors that they had asked us for and some of the set backgrounds, like, we were able to just make it look nice and appealing to what we thought would work on YouTube. A lot of the time when we do get that creative freedom, I think a lot of people feel really happy with the work we're able to provide that. So
the branded yellow, was that something that they wanted to moving forward? Like, did they specifically come with the idea? Looking at the past thumbnails, sometimes they would use colors that are a little bit more cooler on the blue side. Is that something that you guys came up with? Is that the color that they chose?
So they did kind of reference those promo images of Tom and Christina, that black background with the yellow text. That just kind of came to me as being something that could easily help their brand be more recognizable. So I just kind of implemented it into one of those earlier designs that I mentioned earlier, and they seemed to really like it, and then we just started to naturally flow in towards that direction.
Let's talk a little bit about the process of actually going through the rebrands, coming up with the ideas of, oh, this is a couple of references, a couple of examples that we see see work for other channels. What was that process for you, or bringing that up to YMH?
So a lot of it has to do with recognizing what actually works for the kind of content that they have. A podcast thumbnail is going to be very different than a gaming thumbnail would be per se, you know? So you don't really want to overwhelm the viewer with a whole bunch of things, but you also want to keep it clean and make sure that they are interested in whatever the thumbnail is presenting to them. So from what we've seen before and what we researched online, like it was about making sure that the viewer could recognize who the video belongs to, what they're talking about, what kind of channel it is, whether it be comedy or a serious type of podcast, whatever it may be. So I think seeing what was actually successful actually gave us a box to work around and then provide a style within what works.
And is there any channel that you guys use as inspiration, like that you said?
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of different comedic channels that have podcasts out right now that do really well. Bad Friends was something that I definitely referenced. They have very simple but very branded thumbnails. Andrew Schultz has a good podcast named Flagrant, and they also do something very simple, but oftentimes I feel their thumbnails can be a little over-designed. I think Joke World is another good example of a channel that does really well branded thumbnails. So
one thing that they probably don't know is that YMH went through a second rebrand.
Yeah.
And how was that process like?
It was actually a lot easier approaching the second rebrand this time. They felt like they were getting a little too intense for how they wanted to present the channel, and that was totally understandable. Very, very simple. Again, color grading, making sure they're as recognizable as possible while not making them look unnatural. But yeah, and then just having a simple title at the bottom of the thumbnail as well. That was an easier process. I think they were a little bit more straightforward and had a better idea of what they actually wanted. So
from the first rebrand, you thought was like, this one's amazing. Like, which one was your favorite?
my favorite? Yeah, I probably have to say this was my favorite. Christina dressed up for Halloween this episode, and I thought it looked really funny, but also Jimmy Carr is hilarious. And I think it all came together really well, and everything looked really clean and clear, and the video did really well. So super funny. Hope you guys check them out. They're a great channel.
What's one advice that you can give a designer?
Surround yourself with people that are better than you. Don't be afraid to be the worst designer. I think a lot of people around us here, especially at Nava, have a lot of skills, and it was actually really beneficial for me to kind of be the worst designer for a little bit and slowly capture and learn about all their little tips and methods of approaching design. But yeah, I think as long as you continue to look for different outlets that serve you inspiration and continue to study the platform, YouTube thumbnails will come along to you. And yeah, as long as you're passionate about it, it'll come. Yeah.
All right, guys, that's going to be the end of this video. Let us know if you have a thumbnail that you want us to break down or any specific video. We'll go ahead and do that. Any last words, Esteban?
Subscribe, like, the bell notification.
Yeah, do all of it. Hit the like button, comment down below what was your favorite part. Let us know what you want to see next, and we'll see you guys next time.